Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring one of Western Australia's most stunning natural wonders, Lake Cave. It's not just a cave, it's a surreal underground world filled with crystal clear water, shimmering stalactites, and pure geological magic. If you love nature, mystery, and jaw-dropping beauty, stay with me. This one's going to be epic. Lake Cave is located in the Margaret River region, around 300 kilometers south of Perth. It was discovered in 1867 by a group of explorers and is one of over 150 caves in the area. What makes it unique? It's the only cave in the region that has a permanent lake inside it. And believe me, it's as magical as it sounds. So to get to the actual cave, we're going down these steep wooden stairs, about 300 of them, surrounded by lush kauri trees. You can already feel the temperature drop as we descend. It's like stepping into another world. This is where it starts getting mysterious. Lake Cave sits in a sinkhole, and as you go deeper, you're surrounded by formations that are millions of years old. This cave has been slowly shaped by water, dripping. You can't explore Lake Cave on your own. It's a guided tour only, and trust me, it's worth it. Our guide explained that this formation here, called the Suspended Table, is a massive stalactite that seems to float above the lake. It's incredibly rare and completely still, reflecting perfectly in the water.
All right, well, the first thing that has to be said is that yes, the Earth is hollow. It's not a theory. Now, my gate's closed. It's important that gate gets closed, you see, because it's got a powerful magnetic lock. And it's essential that I lock you in. Because I'm now going to talk about chemistry and you can't run away. So this is a limestone cave, and funnily enough, it is all about chemistry. The primary material in limestone is calcium carbonate. 90% of this limestone is calcium carbonate. Rain, however, as it falls through the atmosphere, absorbs traces of carbon dioxide, with the result that every drop of rain has a tiny fraction of carbonic acid. Rain is naturally slightly acidic. If that rain lands in the forest floor with its decomposing organic matter, it can absorb more CO2 and we have a slightly stronger concentration of carbonic acid. And calcium carbonate is a slightly alkaline mineral, and limestone is porous. So as that rainwater starts to make its way through the rock, that trace of acidity will dissolve some of that calcium carbonate, and in the form of calcium bicarbonate then translocate its way through the rock. But if that water was to re-emerge in your cave atmosphere like this, the process is reversed. The CO2 leaves the water and the calcium bicarbonate precipitates out once again as calcium carbonate, now in the form of a calcite crystal. And that is what's responsible for the formation of all our cave decorations, all of our speleothems. All of these structures, all of these stalactites, stalagmites, shoals, straws, flowstones, all of these structures are calcite crystal, and they are all the result of the chemical dissolution and reprecipitation of calcium carbonate. But the shapes they manifest in is being influenced by how that water comes into the cave system. So I'll talk more about that as we go through the cave. Now, we are currently 62 metres below the forest at this point. There is 60 metres of rock above your head, and it takes 10 months, it has been measured 10 months, for that water to translocate its way down to this point in the cave. So we like to say, as you stand here, if a drop lands on you, that's a cave kiss. Alright, let's head to the next platform. Just mind yourself, there's a point at which our concrete walkway meets the timber walkway. It's just a little bit uneven there, just mind your step. Okay, this way, folks.
Some quick facts. These stalactites and stalagmites grow just one centhies every 80 to 100 years. That means what you're seeing took thousands of years to form. And that lake? It's a mirror of pure still water, fed by rain seeping through limestone layers.
It does. We'll talk about that at the next, the back of the cave.
Why do these know any bats?
Bats do enter this cave occasionally, but it's not their preferred habitat.
Oh, okay.
There are bats that live in the doline and little sort of rocky outcrops where they can shelter. They sometimes fly in here, but it seems like it's either too humid, too cool, or something's going on that just doesn't make it their preferred habitat to rest in. Okay. That's right, keep bunching in, folks. There's no social distancing in caves. That's so 2020. I won't have it. So as I was saying, the way in which the spirothems manifest in a cave is influenced by how the water enters the cave system itself. So in the simplest instance, imagine a single droplet hanging suspended from the ceiling of the cave. As it hangs there, the CO2 will leave it and the calcite will precipitate out in the form of a ring. The next drop coming through, the same process occurs and another ring of calcite will be deposited until, over time, hollow straws of calcite start to develop, hollow straws of crystal. Now at some point they almost always become blocked, and when they become blocked the water can't travel down the inside of the straw, so it starts trickling down the outside of the straw. But the same process occurs, the calcite is deposited in layers until over time the classic carrot-shaped stalactite forms. Now if water gets to the bottom of the stalactite or straw and still has a trace of mineral in it, when that water falls it will carry that mineral down, and that's what builds up stalagmites. So stalagmites will only form under dripping sources. So the stalagmites, the stalactites, the straws, these types of formations we refer to as being dripstone because they come about through the action of water dripping. But if you have a source like this which is dripping quite a lot and the outside of the stalagmite becomes saturated and water starts to trickle over the underlying rock, any remaining mineral in that water will precipitate out. So this type of formation, again it's calcite, we refer to as being flowstone because the water's starting to flow at this point. Again, just a descriptive term. This is also an example of flowstone. Now what makes Lake Cave quite interesting in the cave world is not the fact it has a lake. You need to have water for a limestone cave to develop. But what is quite fascinating is this structure here. So what we have is 5.4 tonnes of calcite hanging suspended from the ceiling of the cave. It's making contact with the water, but it doesn't touch the rock beneath it at all. It is entirely suspended. So what's happened here is two stalagmites have grown so long they've made contact with the floor of the cave as it was. Water with mineral has trickled down and created a flowstone structure that has welded the two together, or cemented the two together. After it formed, the cave must have become active again, and the very rock beneath it has dissolved away, leaving it suspended in air. Now what's unusual about this is not that it formed. In fact, things like this form all the time. But what is exceptionally unusual is that it's intact. You see, calcite's not very strong, and this structure should have snapped in half like this one. In most caves you'll go into structures that are formed that transverse from the ceiling to the floor with subsequent dissolution beneath will collapse. It's incredibly rare. Now if you look into the lake itself, you see it's got a consistent black bottom. That's because, as you would expect, there's a food-grade pool liner installed in Lake Cave. So that was installed over 10 years ago, and the reason they put that pool liner in was, as I was saying, the cave was drying up. And there are living in this body of water 5 species of stygofauna, tiny little crustaceans, worms, snail-like creatures that exist in this cave and this cave only. It's endemic to this cave. So they were concerned to preserve those stygofauna from extinction. So that pool line was put in to preserve that puddle of water, and now that the water is back to its historic levels, obviously a wise decision that they've done so. Lake Cave is the most active cave in the World Naturalist which we're about to go around to the most active corner. So, if you haven't had your cave kiss, brace yourself, it's pretty drippy around here. So these are all straws. Now, if you look closely at the bottom of each straw, you will see there is a drop of water. So as you're watching, the CO2 is leaving that water and the calcite is precipitating out before your very eyes, really slowly. In a typical cave, these straws develop at the rate of 1 centimetre every 100 years. That's the normal rate of formation. But once again, Lake Cave is a little different. If you look over here, you might be able to see that sooty mark on this straw. So 70 years ago, a tour guide stood here with a candle and marked that straw. And it's been about 4 centimetres of growth in 70 years. If this cave was competing in the Cave Olympics, if you go on the drug test, it's on the roid, there's something going on. So why is it so? Well, there's a couple of ways to explain it, but let's start with the firstly with the assumption that every droplet of water coming into the cave has the same amount of dissolvement in it. Not an unreasonable assumption to make. Now, as you're watching these straws, those drops aren't going anywhere. They're remaining hanging suspended in the atmosphere. Now, it takes time for the CO2 to leave. It takes time for the calcite to precipitate out. So the longer the drops remain suspended, the more opportunity there is for calcite precipitation. It's counterintuitive, but it's the slow rate of dripping that's contributing to the faster deposition of the calcite. Now, to highlight that, if you look over here, you'll see a funny little stunted stalagmite straw structure. And look, it's dripping like a tap. It's dripping crazy fast. Now, it's dripping so fast that there is no time for the CO2 to leave. There is no time for the calcite to precipitate out. So as a consequence, the mineral dissolved in each of those drops is being carried down, with the result that we have this relatively massive stalagmite flowstone structure forming. Same process, same dripping of water, different types of formation. Here, relatively swift formation of a straw. Here, clearly a manifestation of flowstone. It's all about how that water is coming into the cave. Now, to that point, if you have a sloping surface in your cave so our water droplet can't hang but trickles, you can leave a trace of mineral as it does so. The next drop will pretty much follow the same path. You notice that phenomenon in your car on a rainy day where water seems to go down the windshield down consistently in the same path. The same thing happens here. But each droplet leaves a trace of mineral until over time actual sheets of calcite start to form. So if you look at the ceiling behind you, you'll see a formation called a shore. It looks organic, but it is in fact pure mineral. And it's not much thicker than a droplet of water. There's one here above us we can see. They're quite thin structures and they are translucent. Now, as you look around, most of these formations are white. Calcite is naturally a white mineral. If you look down here, this is not white. This is looking pretty ordinary and it goes all the way to the back of the cave. And that is the consequence of human engagement with the cave itself. You see, in those early days of cave tourism, tin colonies and extremes would bring people into the cave. They would carry a candle in their hand and they would climb over the calcite itself. Now, they weren't being bandaged, they're here to admire the cave, but this was their unintended consequence of touching it. So some of this will be dirt from boots, some of this will be soot from candles, but most of this is human touch. And it doesn't happen immediately, it takes time to discover. So that's why the damage was done before they put in steps to stop that process. On a positive note, if you look down here, you'll see these white spots. That's fresh calcite coming down. So with time, this damage will be covered up, but it could literally take thousands of years before it's fully but that's why we put that cave up. Now, the other thing we often notice in this corner of the cave, nothing at the moment, is we often hear blowflies buzzing around in this corner of the cave. Now, nothing lives in this cave apart from our stygofauna. Our stygofauna can exist because the water comes down through the root mat and brings down traces of nutrients. But above the water, there is no ecosystem, there is no life, and yet sometimes you will find blowflies in the cave. And the reason you do is they're following us down. They're coming down after us. You see, blowflies eat mammals, or more specifically, dead mammals. And our gold standard is we get you all out alive, so there's nothing left here for the blowflies to eat. So they die. And what's cool about that is you'll see dotted around certain places little blowfly bodies slowly being encased in calcite. They are being turned into fossils. And this is of great significance because can you imagine one day opening up a newspaper to read that the common Australian blowflies become extinct? That would be a terrible day. But on that day you can take comfort that scientists could come in, extract blowfly DNA and revive the species. We need never live in a world without the blowfly. That's a good thing. Alright, let's head towards the back of the cave now. It's only 82 metres from the front to the back in Lake Cave, but what it lacks in scale, it makes up for in pretty. What do you think so far? Sometimes the studiopens do have coloration. Now that coloration can come around for a number of reasons, including the presence of other minerals like iron oxide. But one of the more common reasons that studiopens have coloration has to do with I said before my chemistry run down, but if rainwater sits in the forest floor with its decomposing organic matter can absorb additional CO2, and also absorbs the tannins from organic matter. So just like the colour of red wine or the colour of tea, there's a natural amber golden tones coming through. Now, why this corner of the cave has coloration and the rest of it is a bit of a mystery, but this is it's enough to say that the water is colour. So we call this our Instagram cave. It's great to have been able to come when the lake is full. If you were here, as I said, 18 months ago, the puddling.
I want to stop talking for a bit so you can just listen. The sound of water dripping, the silence echoing. This is one of those places where you feel truly connected to the earth.
All right, folks, it is now time for Cave Darkness, which is going to be both the highlight and I must say it, the low light of your tour. Come on, tough crowd, that was a good line. So folks, for us to have Cave Darkness, we need to have no light. So this is my device on and this is my device off. So we can just take a moment to turn our phones, our cameras. If you have a smartwatch, just turn those lights off. That way we won't have any light sneaking in. Otherwise, just tuck it in your pocket or pop your hand over it. All right, here we go. Look, there's one coming on, there's one going off. There we go. All right, let's go to Cave Darkness. Don't go wandering off and get wet quick. Oh, I've got some light. There we go.
Oh, nice.
And you can hear the drips. It's quite a special place to be. So it's amazing, isn't it, that it's in this complete darkness that nature creates this beauty. I've got a colleague, Jodie, she likes to say that nature has no ego. I like that. Klein in Western Australia is a solid granite bedrock. Now, granite is an impervious igneous rock. Water can't penetrate through it, and along this section of coastline, that granite actually tilts towards the ocean. Now, starting about 1.5 million years ago, there was a series of ice ages, and during those ice ages, so much water was locked up at the poles and glaciers that the ocean levels dropped dramatically, up to 120 metres. Now, our Doline is 50 metres deep, so you can imagine a drop of 120 metres is huge, and that exposed an enormous amount of oceanic sands. Now, when life first evolved, it was amorphous. It was just cells and blobs and jellies. It got as complicated as things like sponges. It was about 550 million years ago, give or take a few weeks, that life developed the capacity to biomineralise, to capture carbon from the atmosphere and to create structure. And by structure I mean things like seashells, like corals, like our skeletons, they're all calcium carbonate. So those oceanic sands, those marine sands that were exposed by that ice age event,
You know, this cave made me think about time differently. Everything is slowed down here. Every drop of water tells a story. It's peaceful, humbling. We're always rushing in the outside world, but here, the earth reminds you to slow down. If you're planning to visit, here are some tips. Tours run daily, but it's best to book ahead. Wear good shoes. The stairs are steep and can be slippery. Bring a jacket. It gets cool inside the cave. And of course, don't forget your camera. The reflections are unreal. That's a wrap on Lake Cave, one of the most stunning hidden gems in WA. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. What place should I explore next? Until then, keep wandering and stay curious. See you in the next vlog.